Do we have an intangible self that's somehow separate from our body? What are the assumptions that have come to underpin our modern understanding of psychology? And is the soul just a relic of the past? So, Angela, do you want to start by introducing yourself for the viewers?
My name is Angela Shumegi, and currently I am adjunct research professor of religion and humanities at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada.
Now, we've heard and we hear a lot about the kind of Western tradition of concepts of mind, but you're talking about something a little different here, which is to say the Buddhist and shamanic traditions. Does it make sense to think of those as totally separate to the Western tradition, or are there lines of influence and consonance between them?
I don't think that ideas of mind and soul are totally separate, really, in any cultures. I think that those ideas and what we think about them and how we conceptualize them, I feel that that's a common human endeavor. And so I wouldn't put it in an entirely separate box.
Okay. Well, what is the Buddhist concept of self, as you understand it? How does that work out? Big question.
Yes, big question. Buddhist concept of self. Well, the Buddhist idea is that there is no self. So we have a problem there, because obviously everyone feels that they are a self. I feel that I'm a self. So then we have to understand what no self means. And that relates to the understanding that there is no unchanging, permanent part of human personality. So if we want to talk about self, then we're talking about something that is process, but whatever is ongoing and becoming, not anything that is.
And how did that concept sort of develop? Because it does feel radically different to certainly sort of Western individualistic ideas where the self is the sort of locus of being.
I mean, the Buddha taught, Shakyamuni Buddha taught within the matrix and the context of Hindu religion. And within Hindu religion, then there is the idea and the teaching of the soul, the Atman, which is eternal, unchanging. That is what continues from life to life to life. And the Buddha thought that that is an essentialist view. And so he chose to speak about the non-essentialist view of a person. But that is not to say that there is no continuation at all, because this all has to do with the continuation of the person. Because within Hinduism and Buddhism, there are many lives. The person continues from life to life. So Buddhism would say, yes, there is continuation, but there is no permanent, unchanging thing that continues.
So is that the great break with Hindu tradition in some sense?
It's one of the breaks, yes. Yeah.
And does the Buddhist account of this sort of, plainly there is this idea of selfhood. We have an instinctive illusion that we have it. Is the project of Buddhist theory of mind to try and, as it were, escape from that illusion?
Well, I think the idea is to see clearly what is the case. I mean, one of the passages in the Pali literature that describes nirvana, the Buddhist goal, says that it is as though a person with eyes to see comes upon a clear mountain pool and can see that there are fishes and stones and all that is there is clear to see. So this has to do with clear seeing what is actually the case. And Buddhist view would be that to think or to apprehend myself as something, that is not the case. Myself as I appear to me is illusory. The way I apprehend myself and the world is illusory.
And where does the body fit into all this? I mean, is there, where the customer thinks body divine? Yeah. Is the body an illusion too?
Well, it's hard to say,
Sorry, these are big questions.
A big question. So the body then in Buddhist thought is created through what they would say karma. Well, the body and the mental habits that go along with it. Meaning that it has come about due to causes and conditions. And those causes and conditions from past lives include the mental habits that we nurtured in past lives. And that is what has brought about the kind of body also that we have, and the fact that there is a body, because we take birth. So to take birth is to have some kind of form, some kind of body. And that is understood to be the effect of past action and past thought and past mental habits.
And are those effects sort of deterministic? Is there a sense in which our physical shape and our mental habits and, what would pass for selfhood are determined by this karmic cycle over which we have sort of no control? We're a series of, I don't know, we're being borne along by this river of history, or is there room for agency and free will and the sort of directed way of thinking that might characterize Western thought?
What is past, we cannot have any effect on. And therefore, we cannot have any effect on how that what that has brought about. But Buddhism consistently thinks in terms of process. So what we are born with, or what past actions and thoughts and habits have brought about, that is simply, okay, here's the effect. But at every moment, we have agency to change the flow of that river. Yes, the river flows along and it brings us to a certain point. But at every point, there is the possibility and the free agency to change the future course of the river.
Okay. And what survives from life to life? You've said that that Buddha's teachings de-emphasize the idea that there was an essential self that went through the cycle of reincarnation. If there isn't an essential self that goes through, what is it that in Buddhist teachings survives? And I mean, does it make sense to talk about a soul in this context?
So again, here is another simile or example that's given in the literature. It is as though someone brought a bowl of milk to you and said, keep this for me until tomorrow. And when I go to pick up the bowl of milk, you hand me a bowl of curds, bowl of yogurt. And I say, well, this isn't what I gave you. You say, well, it is. This is the same bowl, but now it's curds. So
Heraclitean.
So the idea then is that there is continuity, but there is change, and so again, the literature would say that the person that is reborn is not the same as the person who died, but not different. Just as the curds is not the same as the milk I gave you, but somehow not different.
Yeah.
There is a connection. Yeah.
And can you say a little about, because certainly in Western philosophy, one of the million-dollar questions is the relationship between the perceiving self and the outside world. What does Buddhism have to tell us about the phenomenal world? Are these objects and phenomena that we take in through our senses seen as, actually existing out there, or are they a further part of the illusion?
Well, the birth doesn't take place like in a vacuum. So you are born into an environment, and that environment is related to your past thoughts and actions, so that you are born as a human with human eyes, and you live in a human, you perceive the world in a particular way. If you were born as an animal, then you would have a different perception of the world. And I would say if you have taken...
But that would be a shift in perceptions of the same world, would it? Is the understanding? It's not, we're not in a situation of extreme idealism whereby your perceptions create the world, as in some traditions.
Yes. The Buddhists would also say that your past actions, your karma, creates not only yourself, but yourself and your world. So that the analysis of the personality, for example, into various aspects of perception and form and consciousness and all that, the analysis of the human personality includes the external world. So this is part of our mental makeup, so to speak. That it exists in the way it does, also because of our past karma. And if you say, well, the world is the same for everyone, well, the Buddhists also speak about what is called collective karma. So to be born as a human means that we have certain shared human tendencies that will bring about this kind of world and this kind of understanding and perception of the world.
So the room in which we're both sitting at the moment has been created by both of our karma.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
And this is probably a far too kind of, vulgar question, but karma is... Can you explain how that works? Because there's a sort of popular idea that karma is like a kind of mental score sheet, whereby at the end of your life, if you get, you've got really good karma, so I'll get reincarnated as something great, or I've got terrible karma. I mean, is it seen in serious Buddhism as a sort of moral, if that makes sense, a sort of moral score or a moral value that carries you through, or is it different to that?
Karma is a very subtle and actually complex idea within Buddhism. And it is said that to expound on karma, one needs to be a Buddha. So,
sorry,
not being a
we
Buddha,
struggled to book him.
You really put me on the spot here. However, let me say from my limited perception and understanding that karma is the principle of cause and effect, which is very strong in Buddhism. That principle, as it is played out in a moral field, in a field of virtue and non-virtue. Now there are those who sort of regard karma as a bank, and I'm doing good deeds, and that's building up my karma bank.
That's a slightly childish view.
It's there. However, definitely the idea would be that if you are grasping on to your good deeds as, oh, this is something I'm doing that's going to, give me a better life or whatever, that sort of mitigates the result. Karma. So, for example, they will say that if you put a spoonful of salt into a very small glass of water, the water will be very, very salty. If you put the same spoonful of salt into a bathtub of water, you likely won't taste it. So this is to show that the same, let us say, the same negative action done by someone whose mind stream is generally positive and virtuous, that same negative action is going to have a different effect than that negative action done by someone whose mind stream is continually negative and unvirtuous. So it is not that
dramatically bad if done by somebody whose mind stream is generally positive.
Yeah, it would have a different effect. It is what is the effect. So you've had a bad day at work, and you come home and you're feeling rotten, and the dog is annoying you, and you kick the dog, and you leave it there. That is going to give you one result in the future. If you kick the dog and the dog yelps and you think, oh, what am I doing? And you pick up the dog and take it to the vet or make sure it's okay, then that now has changed the result of the first action. So karma is a word meaning action. So every action, all actions have some result and some consequence. But that consequence is very finely tuned according to the act, the type of mind that is generating that act, and the surrounding conditions.
Now, I'm intrigued you use the word mind stream. Can you expand on that a little? What does that mean for Buddhist understanding?
Mind stream, it means that mind, again, is not this monolithic thing. It is a process of thoughts and emotions and ideas that go from one to the next to the next. Even the body in Buddhist thought, there are no nouns. I am not Angela. I am Angela-ing. That is the. And yet, I don't, nothing stays the same. This table is turning to dust. It doesn't start turning to dust, 2 million years from now. It is already on the way.
That's a sobering thought. I mean, there is that thing, isn't there, that the notions of self and other are in some sense baked into the grammar of, I'm pretty sure, every language on earth. I mean, do you think that tells us something fundamental and universal about ideas of identity?
Yes, I think it tells us that universally we have a sense of me. And if we have a sense of me, then that assumes a sense of the other. And it is that sense of me that Buddhist thought aims to break down the idea that I am anything. Because again, this is the search. They'll say, where is that? Where is that I? Which part of you is the I? Is it your brain, or is it in your hair? Like, well, and eventually, then the idea is that the person comes to a conclusive realization that when I speak about I and me, that is a convenient fiction. It helps me to negotiate, in ordinary life, but it does not have any ultimate status.
Yeah. Now, you talk in your work about how, as Buddhism travels east and north from India, the ancient world, it meets and kind of runs into these sort of shamanic traditions. And can you just talk a bit about how those two traditions kind of, as it were, co-opt each other or interfere with each other? I mean, does it make sense to talk of shamanism as one thing, or is it a kind of catch-all term for a whole range of ideas?
Oh, yes. Even the term shamanism is highly debated among scholars, because there are certainly some scholars that would say that that terminology should only be applied to people like the Tungus, Siberian people, Mongolian people. But there are others that use it in a more analytic way. However, there are many, just as there are many Buddhisms, there are many shamanisms. And I like to think of shamanism and Buddhism more as a constellation of belief and practice that differs.
And what would be the central points of difference?
Central points of difference are that the shamanic cultures understand the world in terms of two corresponding elements, a visible element and an invisible element. And reality is, both are real. So we live in this real world of visible humans, and there is a corresponding real world of spirits and spirit beings. Buddhist thought would not deny that there are invisible spirits and spirit beings. But again, ultimately, we would come to the idea that they're all, both this so-called real world, waking world, and whatever the so-called invisible world of spirits, are both empty of any ultimate status, meaning that they cannot exist independently. They all exist dependent on causes and conditions. So that's one major difference. Another is the Buddhist soteriological aim, the liberation aim. Uh-huh. That does not appear in shamanic cultures. But the idea that the goal of religious life is to be utterly free of evil and suffering and all that, that would not apply to many shamanic cultures where good and evil are to be kept in balance. Balance and harmony is the sort of touchstone for shamanic cultures. So evil cannot be, it has its place. It must be kept in its place, but it cannot be eliminated.
Can you talk a little about how shamanic traditions conceptualize the mind or the soul?
I've often thought that the word soul really doesn't apply to shamanic cultures, not in the way we understand it. From a Christian perspective, or even from a Hindu perspective of the Atman, because those ideas of soul have to do with that eternal, unchanging, spiritual aspect of oneself. The shamanic idea of soul is much more pragmatic, I would say. The soul is that part of that aspect of the person's consciousness or mind that can separate from the body and go wandering around in the spirit world. Also, there is no sense that the soul is particularly eternal in shamanic cultures. In some cultures, the soul can die. Well, it can get sick, and the shaman has to go and rescue it or heal it. Sickness in many shamanic cultures is always understood as soul sickness, meaning, yes, you can take the medicine from the doctor and that will cure your body, but it is the shaman who needs to cure the soul. The soul may not be healed, even if the body is healed. And there are also, we usually think of soul, like I said, in Christianity and in Hindu thought, as unitary. That is not the case in shamanic cultures. There can be many souls, up to 7 at least, I've come across. Souls can inhabit every joint in the body. You can have the dream soul as one that wanders about in dreams, the life soul that if that one leaves you, then you're dead. There are many types of souls, and in one culture that I know of, I can't remember names now, the soul transforms after death into an animal, like a beetle. And when that animal dies, well, then that's all gone. So the concept of soul in shamanic cultures is so different. I think it should be something like spirit energy is much more accurate in describing how shamanic cultures understand soul.
So what happens when these two quite contradictory schools of thought meet?
Well,
30-second bit.
What happen? I mean, what happens in some countries is that, like maybe Thailand or Southeast Asia countries, they're kept quite separate. The Buddhists deal with death and karma and things like that, and the shamans deal with the practical needs of the community. My crops are failing. I lost a cow. Whatever you might need, or I'm sick with a rash, and that could be the result of a spirit attack. So the shamans deal with the spirits, and the Buddhists deal with karma, your
So they sort of belong together with that.
So that's in some places. But in other places, like Tibet, the Buddhist culture and the shamanic culture became quite integrated. And Jeffrey Samuel has written a book called Civilized Shamans, which sort of argues for that the literate Buddhist authorities kind of out-shaman the shamans. And therefore, Buddhism came to dominate in Tibet. But by assuming shamanic practicalities and serving the people in the same way.
Now, dreams seem to be very important in this whole setup. Why is that? What significance are dreams in shamanic thought?
Well, dreams are, first of all, in shamanic cultures, in many, dreams and visions are very much the way in which the shaman accesses the invisible world, the world of spirits. In Buddhist thought, dream is very conflicted because dreams are illusion. I mean, if the waking world is illusion, then dreams are ultra illusions. However, within the religious texts, there is a lot of writing on dreams and what they mean religiously. And so you have, in the Tibetan context, you have a situation where dreams and visions authenticate the spiritual progress and efficacy, both of the Buddhist authority, the Buddhist Lama, and the shaman. So then we have a situation of tension, but also resolution. So,
and does that in any way, I mean, the idea that dreams can give you access to a truth that isn't available in the phenomenal waking world, does that anticipate or parallel the sort of Freudian ideas about dreams, do you think, or is this a separate sort of?
You know, I have to say I don't know a whole lot about Freudian idea of dreams, but I mean, by osmosis, I kind of know that the thing about Freud, I think, was that Christianity really denigrated dreams because they could come from the devil, and that was not something to rely on at all. And I think Freud was one of the first to reintroduce the value and importance of someone's dreamscape or dream world. But in other cultures, like in shamanic cultures, and that has always been the case.
If I can ask, do you see some of these ideas, these kind of more mystical and kind of holistic ideas, coming back into focus now?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of neo-shamanism, neo-paganism, I don't know, neo-Buddhism, which is very popular. I think that they are imbued always with our contemporary ideas and ways of seeing the world. So it not necessarily reflecting how these ideas developed. I think, they come back because they're exotic and we seem to gravitate towards what is exotic and what is different. But sometimes I feel that the practitioners of sort of these new shamanisms or even in Western Buddhism, I mean, there are many really good practitioners, but there are many who adopt it in a way that is self-aggrandizing, which is quite the opposite to what the intent is. So what to do?
Angela, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.